Hi, in this video I'll take you through Bayesian optimization. The key agendas are: number one, the mathematics behind Bayesian optimization. We'll look at an approximation from my scratch implementation, and we'll understand how to do hyperparameter tuning using an scikit-optimize package. Given a black box function f of x, which we really want to approximate, which we don't know the details about, and that we have been given some data, which we're going to look at it as a vector f. So the algorithm starts. The first step is we are going to be finding a few sample data points that we will choose randomly, and we'll put it into a bag. We're indicating that as bag 1. Then from this bag 1 we are going to compute a function called surrogate function, which is nothing but a function which will closely approximate the unknown black box function using some underlying mathematical assumptions. We're going to look at surrogate functions in detail later in this video. Then we go into a loop where we are actually going to be adding additional data point, one data point each time in a loop as we iterate the loop into the bag, and such an addition happens using another special form of a function called the acquisition function. Once we have the additional data point in bag 1, we'll reevaluate surrogate function again, and we'll continue this loop unless the surrogate function's max does not change, or its variance in the change is below a certain threshold, or f is exhausted. Particularly, we would terminate when f is exhausted if we don't want to extrapolate. Now that we understand what the algorithm overview is, let's go on and take a quick look at the intuition from my implementation. I have taken a sample of 50 data points for an unknown black box function. The black box function was implemented by myself using sine and cosine functions, but that is not known to the algorithm. And I'm going to be sampling a few data points. So the first iteration, I've sampled 7 data points, and to be clear on what this chart is showing is we have the black lines, which are indicating the actual unknown black box function f of x. The red lines are the output of my surrogate function, which is f tilde of x. The green stars are the data points I have sampled, and the blue is the last sampled data point, just for me to know which was the last one. Now let us take a look at iteration 2, where we have sampled now 8 points totally, and the newly sampled point is the last point, which is what is indicated as the sampled point 50. This is the 50th index is getting sampled, and there actually looks to be no difference between iteration 1 and iteration 2 from the perspective of the surrogate function's approximation. Why? Because it so happens that the last point actually falls almost in a straight line to an earlier approximation. Now let's go on and take a look at a few more iterations. So next we look at iteration number 4, where we have actually sampled the total of 10 points, but in this particular iteration we sampled this point, which is the beginning point. Okay. Next we look at iteration 8, where we have sampled a lot more points, a total of 14 points, and then during the iteration 8 we sampled this particular point. So now we can start to see that our sampling method, which is using the acquisition function, is intelligently trying to find turning points in the algorithm or in my black box. That you can understand by looking at how the surrogate function was here compared to how it has now chosen a point which so happens to be a turning point, and the approximation now starts to get through that function. Okay, So that's a very important observation. Next, let's go on and try and understand what happens with iteration 12, where we have already sampled 18 points, and the current iteration 12, I have got this point that I'm actually sampling. Again, we can start to see that a lot of similarity now starts to come in between the black box function and our surrogate function, because the surrogate function has very nicely sampled turning points in the overall space, which are getting approximated using the surrogate function. Let's now also look at iteration 17, where we have sampled a total of 23 points. This was the last point that we are sampling, which is index number 40. But what is important to know is, though our black box function was actually built with 50 total data points, only with 23 data points, we have already approximated the function quite very good. Yeah, there are still some differences, marginal differences do exist, but this approximation is excellent. Okay, so this is the power of Bayesian optimization and the algorithm I just explained. And now we will start taking a look at what it takes to implement this from a mathematical perspective. Next, let's look at some of the underpinning maths for this particular algorithm's implementation. First is our assumption. So we're going to make one assumption, that the random process that we are going to deal with is both stationary and also is Gaussian in nature. Okay, so what that means is, if I have a particular array f which has the f of x of all the elements, this f of x, if you recall, is our black box function. So f of x1 is the output of the black box function for element x1. Same way f of x2 would be the output of black box function for an element x2. Similarly, all the way to f of xn, which is the output of a black box function if it is inputted with xn. Okay, so this particular array is actually normally distributed. That's what we are making an assumption. And what does that mean? That means obviously the probability density function is going to be the Gaussian density, which is 1 by square root of 2 pi sigma square exponential x minus mu the whole square by 2 sigma square. So this is the standard PDF of our Gaussian distribution that we can then apply on this particular data set. The word stationarity also needs to be given an attention, because what we are literally trying to say is we are trying to make this time invariant. So we want to have the joint probability distribution assumption that it does not change with time. Therefore, the overall distribution of this data is time invariant. The mean value of this particular array is m, and the covariance value is going to be approximated with an RBF kernel function. So we have seen RBF kernel functions when we did SVM lectures. So in this particular case, we are going to be using the same RBF function, which is this function represented by a large K. Okay, so it's a covariance between multiple points. Okay, so that's the basic mathematics. Now we're going to go and extend this. The prediction function is nothing but we are trying to predict the probability of f of x conditional some data has been available to us. Okay, so this particular prediction can be approximated using this normal distribution, which has a zero mean and a covariance of c tilde, divided by the normal distribution with a zero mean and a covariance of c. So if you do recall, this form actually implies we have applied Bayesian formulation for conditional probability and we have simplified. Okay, and there are a number of steps involved in the next simplification, which we are also going to be doing, which is we are going to rewrite this particular form into a normal distribution for f of x conditional mu and sigma square, where we are actually going to be giving the formulation for what a mu and sigma squares are using the RBF kernel that we saw earlier. Okay, so one of the formulations, this derivation of mu and sigma square, is fairly lengthy, but if you take any statistics book at a graduate level, you will be able to see those formulations. Now, what this k here, c and c tilde, are standing for is given on the right side. K is an array of the RBF kernels. C tilde has the initial point of the RBF kernel at 0. Other than that, it has got K and a K transpose, and the C, which is basically the covariance matrix that we have populated using the RBF kernel. Okay. With this prediction function, what we are stating is, on an average, our unknown function, which is f of x, will assume a value of mean in x with the variance of sigma. Okay, and this is something very important, and then we'll be using it when we do our computation logic or the algorithm of surrogate functions in the next slide. Now let's take a look at the surrogate function algorithm, which is actually doing the approximation work for us. The first step is we are going to be looping over all samples available to us in input x for which we want to evaluate. The next step is we are going to be building in k and f vectors. The kernels that we'll be using is RBF kernel. Following that, we'll be building in the c and the c tilde matrices. These are the covariance matrices. Then we will calculate the mu and sigma for the overall distribution. Following that, what we're going to be doing is we'll take each of the mu that has been calculated and we'll be storing it into another array, which is we are calling it the predicted mu, and then the sigma that we have calculated, we're going to store it in another array called predicted sigma. Okay, so this is going to happen through the entire loop for all values of the input x, and after completing that particular for loop, after exhausting all the input samples, we will come over to step 6, where we're going to be calculating omega, which is the mean of the black box function for the sampled points. Okay, so remember, there is a set of points we have sampled, and we would be applying the black box function for it and extracting the value returned by the black box function for each of the point, and that particular mean is what we're going to storing as omega. Once we have the mean, which is what we're terming as omega, we're going to calculate kappa, which is nothing but the predicted mu, which is coming from all our for loops. So this is an array, and then plus the omega, this is a scalar value. Then we return both kappa and also the predicted sigma, which actually carries the variance estimation for our surrogate function. Okay, so this is the pseudocode and the algorithm of surrogate function. Now, one question we haven't yet answered is, how are we going to choose the additional point to be sampled for a surrogate function? And the answer for that is the acquisition function. An acquisition function is a function that tries to do an intelligent way to sample data using some metrics or a measure. Okay, we are not going to just depend on random sampling, but we want something that is a little bit more smarter. And there are various techniques for applying acquisition functions. And some of those techniques include upper confidence bound, lower confidence bound, probability of improvement, and expected improvement. So these are at least the 4 you will see in literature all the time of that people have used for acquisition function. In our case, we're going to be using the upper confidence bound, UCB, and our approximation is this form of an UCB, because there are multiple variations of UCB formulation, again you will see in the literature. This form of the UCB will try and help me find points after doing a trade-off between whether that point is going to give me a maximum in a surrogate function, or is that point near the high variance space within the overall surrogate function. Okay, so that approximation is very helpful for us, and which is what we have applied. So that's it on the acquisition function. Now let's move on and try and understand how Bayesian optimization actually can be used in practice. So one of the things you guys necessarily need to know is Bayesian optimization is very popularly used in hyperparameter tuning, and one of the packages which kind of wraps up a lot of code that I have done a scratch implementation for you to get the intuition earlier in the earlier slides is scikit-optimize GitHub repository. Actually has a very good code. So I've put in just a sample set of codes for you to understand how to implement hyperparameter tuning using this package. First you would import a couple of those packages. One is the space package, and then from the sk-opt you will import the Bayes search CV. This is the most important one. So if you've seen my earlier video with grid search CV, random search CV, then in a very similar way Bayes search CV is this function. We're gonna declare a variable which is the instance of Bayes search CV, and then the parameters for Bayes search CV is actually one of your models. So in this case I'm taking in a gradient boosting regression, and you also would be giving in the second parameter to the Bayes search CV is the array of various values you want the Bayes search to actually evaluate. So in this case I've given learning rates for my boosting, loss values, and the maximum depth of the tree. Okay, and then the third parameter is how many iterations do we want to try. Following that, a random state which will help you fix the seed, and then whether you want the outputs to be verbose or not. So that would help me. And then the end jobs basically tells me how many parallel threads in the existing CPU of your laptop or PC needs to be used. Okay, the CV is going to help me on the cross validation side. So I've here said it's a 5-fold cross validation. Okay, now that we understood how to declare it, following the declaration of the variable, it is fairly standard. We're going to use that variable regression dot fit for X train and Y train, and we also have some scoring functions for you to understand which were the parameters that really performed well. Okay, so it is really this easy if you want to use this package for hyperparameter tuning. However, if you're going to be implementing, let me go back to the previous slides, if you're going to be implementing your own acquisition functions and your own logic for surrogate functions, then you would be using typically this type of pseudocode, which is what I have implemented for me to give you the intuition that I gave you in the earlier slides, which is this particular piece. Okay, that's it for this video. Take care.